few more seconds. All right, so here's something that I think is interesting. There's a lot of different numbers, any of y'all I'm sure have looked, about what is our actual debt. How much actual debt do we have per student? I think this is going to go back to transparent communications, and we have got to have it. My opponent did actually speak out on March 28th, because I went back to go listen to the archives in 2013 about the bonds that were going on in the district. Now, one thing that I thought was interesting was this discussion, because she had done a lot of research, and she was talking about the bond review board was not really reporting the numbers accurately, that they're only focusing on the par and not the premium, and that affects it, and it's really a one-to-one. I think what's going on here is that our board may have made some decisions at one time, but the numbers, as we've gone over time, just they're not matching up. We need communication. We need to find out what is the final number, what's going on, to help the community and to help us make sure that we are all aiming towards that same goal. And that's critical, that we understand what really is the best way to move forward. And I say it's not just about focusing on your CAB and your SIB. It's focusing on your state legislation, your federal legislation, your State Board of Education, your TEKS policies that are going to impact your district, that makes you make unfunded mandates and choices and decisions you have to do to fund. It's a whole picture. It's not just CAPS.
The Texas Bond Review Board doesn't provide a real good transparency for our debt. If they're not providing a good transparency for our debt, I believe it's our district's obligation to provide that transparency for our citizens. So we're now, the district says, well, we are platinum rated with the comptroller's office, but you still can't find out what is the cost of the money. And so we had I think it's still up there what it said, where it's got a big spreadsheet now, and it shows what actually was deposited into our construction fund. And then we can figure out what's the cost on that money. I have some issues on that, but I expect we may get to that. As we refinance that, interest turns into principal, and that's a big concern for our community.
Thank you. Number 4, the order for the response will be Trish, Lisa, Trish, Cobby, Don, Cobby. This is a short question. If elected or re-elected, what changes would you prioritize?
Transparency. We need transparent communications. Can we not say it enough? There is an issue. I think the school board is making forward momentum. It's not enough, and it's not quick enough. We are a fast-growing school district covering what? 199 square miles, 36,000 kiddos. Think of all the parents in the community that we're impacting. We need to have transparent communications, and there needs to be transparency in our actions, like we just talked about it. When citizens and community members come out and say, I have an issue, I have a concern, the board has a way to respond to let you know that you've been heard. The other thing I'd like to do as elected is I'd like to also focus, besides on communication and transparency, is on the security and safety of our kiddos. And I have 20 seconds left, so how can I end it with there? But we'll come back to it, hopefully, that I think the issue of safety and security for our children in the classroom is of monumental importance. And I don't think when we go to the end of the day and we look at everything that we're doing forward, the money that we're spending, the safety and security, would be remiss without saying, what are we doing in our education policy now? What are we doing to get us to that next step, to move us forward? And so, if I'm elected, hope you elect me, that's what I want to focus on.
What I would love to focus on is to get clear policies on our debt management, working with this new financial advisor behind us. I think the Texas legislature may help us with that, so that we can, as a board, return to our core mission, which is academic excellence. If you look at the board meeting minutes of where we spend our time, we spend a lot of stuff on protocol, on recognitions, on debt management, and we really need to spend more time on how can we improve student achievement. And so I really would like to see us in this next term spend more focus on our core mission, academics.
But you're on the school board now. If you want to make those changes, make it. We don't need to ask the state legislature to tell us how to do things. If you're on the board and you see a change that needs to be made, make it.
There's a lot of things that I'd like to do. I think the focus has to start out being get the debt under control, which is, I think everybody's now committed to that. There's 6 bills in the legislature that are going to force us to do that, so that's kind of a given. I think the transparency issue is an important one that needs to be focused on. I don't know why the school board doesn't televise its meetings. I don't know why they're not video recorded at least and streamed over the internet in 2015. There's no excuse for doing that. The city's been doing it since 2005. ACC does it, Round Rock does it, Round Rock ISD does it, Travis County does it, Austin City does it. I mean, everybody does it except us. For some reason, I don't understand why that is. So that's something that would allow the public to actually watch and observe what's going on, not just listen to a tape recording and try to figure out what was going on during the meeting. So transparency is a big issue right there. I think something's going to have to be done about the math curriculum. I agree that there are significant issues with academic success. We are a successful district, but something happened horrible in the math curriculum. I know some of it's at the state level, but the district seems to have adopted one of the worst possible math curriculum. The explanation I've been told is the teachers were not properly trained on it. I subscribe to Occam's razor pretty strongly. The simplest explanation is usually the best. If you have hundreds of math teachers who've been successful over time, and you change a variable, the curriculum, I don't think the math teachers forgot how to teach math. And I don't think the kids forgot how to learn math. I think there's something wrong with the curriculum. They need to go back and revisit that decision.
As I've said earlier, academics is probably my #1 focus. That's something that we need to continue to focus on. And we do, as a district, we do a lot of retreats that talks about it. We do a lot of sizings as far as what do we need to do next. And as it relates to the math curriculum, I mean, we picked a program called Bridges to bridge that gap between what the TEKS of Texas told us to do and how we teach it. And there were several districts in the country that in the state that picked that. So academics is my main focus.
Another thing that I think we're going to have to change is the demographers that we use. There have been many instances where they've been wrong. They were wrong this year. They projected over 1,000 new kids in the school. There's 700. So that's 30% factor wrong. Wow. It's a small number now, you know, because there's 36,000 kids. So it's not as brutal as it used to be. But they've been wrong a lot about where the growth was going to happen. They've been wrong about exactly, you know, what was going to influence schools. I think the district, for whatever reason, has given them way too much control over where they buy land and where they build schools. When they present, it's the demographers telling them there's land over here you can buy and you need to put a school here, and there's land over here you can buy and you need to put a school there. The demographers should just be telling you where the growth is going to happen, and then you have staff or you have consultants that go out and find the land and you calculate out where to put the schools given the rest of your operation. It's sort of a strange thing to me, and I assume their staff is involved with the consultants, the demographers, but I don't know why the demographers are the ones telling them where they think land can be purchased and what tract they should buy and when they should build the school. That should be something done locally by the district, not by consultants.
Okay, question number 5, and the order will be Lisa, Trish, Lisa, Don, Bobby, Don. Number 5, do you believe the school board should improve relations with city and county governments? If so, what are the issues with the board's current relationship, and what would you do to improve relations?
From my perspective, I think we work well with our local cities. I find good working relationships. Every now and then we have an issue when we build take a piece of property that, you know, the city might want for commercial use, but we have to make schools a priority in that. So, but for the most part, I think we have very good working relationships with both the city of Cedar Park, city of Leander, city of Austin, not so much. But I have just been actually appointed to something called the Regional Affordability Committee, and that is something that the new Austin City Council has created to improve the communications with the city of Austin. We'll be meeting to look at our bond projects in the context with overlapping tax jurisdictions. It's got Capital Metro, it's got the surrounding school districts, Williamson and Travis County all have representatives. So the whole concept is to look at all of the different needs and what are the most pressing and urgent, and try and pace construction and bond issues so that we can keep our taxes down and keep Austin affordable.
Oh, sounds like an incumbent question, right? How do I know what the, no. Here's what I do know. I know that the school district plays a huge role and needs to be collaborating alongside the city. As far as the Regional Affordability Council, I think something that's interesting about that group that's through the Austin City Council is Don Zimmerman had come out. Anyhow, there were some questions about how that group actually represents fairly, because taxpayer advocates are not sitting at that table in that committee. I'm sure my opponent will help drive some, but there's the question is, right, how are we making sure that all the key players are involved in the process? It's not just the city, which is important, our city councils, our Chamber of Commerce, our businesses, our citizens, our parents. It's making sure that everybody has a role and that they all realize their voice will be heard when they bring it to the board. And that is something I want to keep working on with, y'all can guess it by now, transparent communications.
Lisa, did you want to know that, or are you fine?
I'm fine with that, yeah.
Okay, all right, Don? Would you have a question?
Over the years,
Could you speak up just a tad? I can't.
sure. Over the years, we've worked close with the school, the city councils, both in Leander, Cedar Park. We've had participation in Austin occasionally, not so much recently. Our city, our district encompasses Georgetown, Liberty Hill. We've met with those, but the biggest thing that I think relationships that we've had with the city is on our construction, and the fact that our folks in the construction group work close with them on a lot of stuff. And Lisa's right. I mean, they get upset with us occasionally when we buy a piece of land that they want to designate it for commercial. But when you talk about the demographer, when they give us that data, they don't tell us where to build a school. They don't tell us where to buy land. They tell us where the growth is going to be, and we go look for that. So we don't have somebody like that telling us. So I don't know where my opponent got that, but that doesn't happen that way.
It's not really pertinent to this question, but I got it at the October board meeting where the demographers laid out this year's demographic report, but that's neither here nor there. In terms of working with the city, the school district and the city do work together, sometimes better than others. Early on, when I was on the city council, we were slowing them down a lot. We were not getting them their permits when they needed. Several of us on the council pushed the staff to streamline things with the school district and to work with them. We then entered a phase where the school district sort of took advantage of us. They built Henry Middle School on a piece of land that they hadn't bought. That didn't have a road to it, it didn't have water to it, didn't have sewer to it, and they didn't have a building permit. But they still poured the slab for the entire foundation of the middle school without any approvals or any land. And they hadn't even bought the land. There was not even a legal lot there yet. The thing that I think that shows is, because we got over that, we had a large fight about that, and they promised never to do that again. But they put schools a lot of times in places that there is no transportation network. You see that right now down at Vandegrift, where there's really a very bad way in and no good way out. You're having a bunch of teenagers make left turns on 2222 during rush hour. I don't know why anybody thought that was a good idea. I think if the school district worked a little more closely with the transportation side of the various cities, it would really help what they do and how their schools function.
First of all, when you're looking for schools, you try to get them in the vicinity that the population growth is going to grow in. And it's not a magical thing that you can go find 110 acres for a high school or 35 acres for a middle school. You've got to go where the land is, and then there's this thing about being able to convince the landowner to sell it to us. I don't know where Cobby's coming from on the Henry and Vista Ridge, because we bought 210 acres up there, sat on it for 2 years while they did the bird, and there was a golden cheek warbler issue. And then finally, once it was all closed, I don't think that we built a school without having land purchased in the beginning.
Okay, thank you. Number 6, the order will be Cobby, Don, Cobby, Trish, Lisa, Trish. Do you have any ideas about how the district might save money in either construction or operations?
It's kind of a large question for a 1-minute answer. I think in construction, one of the things that they need to do is they need to look at the size of their schools. McKinney ISD, a couple years ago, needed to build new high school capacity. They have one really big high school that they just built, and they had 2 smaller high schools, North McKinney, I can't remember the other one, but they were older schools and were smaller. They looked at, should we build one big school on new land, a greenfield project, or should we expand the 2 existing schools? And they had their staff run side-by-side comparisons of not just the construction costs, but the operating costs. And the answer that they got was to expand the 2 smaller schools to the larger new school size, save them $5 million a year in operating costs, which is real money, and $30 million in capital costs. It's stuff like that, and I've asked the trustees and the staff, have you ever done that here? And they said no, because 10 or 12 years ago, they decided 2,400 was the perfect size for a high school in this district. Well, if you push that out to just 2,800, add 400 at each of the 6 high schools, that's another high school. You wouldn't need to build a whole new high school. You expand the 6 existing ones. You find the way to get the extra capacity in those buildings or on those tracks, because they do have a lot of land. Stuff like that needs to be looked at, and that does have an operating savings and a construction savings.
Some years ago, we've done this a couple times. We went around not only in the state of Texas, but in the U.S. and did sizings as far as what's the optimal school size that can be managed. There are some school districts that like football, and they build a big school to accommodate that. We've decided that 8, 12, and 24 was the right number for manageability. And when we build those schools, we build them for the core facility. Now, the functional capacities are not always the same. The functional capacities are based on a lot of special ed programs, different activities that come into that school that we may, have to. A Vandegrift, as an example, may only have a functional capacity of 2,100. Core facility is 24. And in most cases, we have portables on some of those locations too. So, it's a shame in a way, but I'm going to a fundraiser tomorrow night at Leonard Middle School. That basically what they're doing is raising funds because they're so overcrowded right now that they're going to build a covered facility outside their cafeteria so their kids don't have to start eating dinner at 10 and getting done at 2. So, anyway.
So the issue still remains that maybe things have changed. If you look at the Fast Growth Schools Coalition and go look at all of the high schools that are in the Fast Growth School Coalition, we build the 2nd smallest high schools of any of those districts. There's 85 districts in that coalition. Most of them are building schools in the 2,800 to 3,000 range. Only Frisco ISD builds schools smaller than we do. And so things have changed, We don't have the ability to build everything we want to build. We need to start focusing on what can we build and living within our budget. That's the kind of stuff we do at the city. Our INS rate at the city has fluctuated between 24 and 26 cents for the last 15 years because we follow that kind of model. And the school district needs to start exercising some creative thought. This organization used to be, years ago, totally committed to the notion of continuous improvement. Every idea was questioned. They did a plus delta analysis of everything they did, and they revisited decisions and decided, do we need to change anything? For the last 5 or 6 years, my observation from going to meetings, reading stuff in the packets and things like that, a lot of that has really slowed down or stopped. They know what they want to do and they're just doing it. They're mechanistically implementing a plan while the world around them has changed. And I don't think going from 2,400 to 2,800 is going to overtax the facilities. But if it is a problem, and McKinney figured it out. If McKinney can do it, I feel certain we can do it.
Trish?
I think one of the things is to be aware that we are not in a vacuum. So the district is making decisions, but decisions the state makes impacts the financing the district's going to make. And things change, just as Kabi said. So at one point, there's something called SSI, Student Success Initiative funding, that comes down through the Texas Education Agency. There used to be, well, let's just say a pretty good amount of funding in that pool. But in 2011, y'all remember that hard cut time, right? Funding was slashed. When funding got cut, what the TEA said was instead of giving schools this money to help students be able to be promoted to the next grade, the students who needed help, what we're going to do is we're going to buy some software licenses that all the schools can use. See, it's not going to help individually the school districts anymore. So as a school district, when you're going to your legislator, don't ask for more SSI funding because it's just going to the software. You need to make sure you're aware as a district what policies are being implemented and how it's going to impact your finances. How I would save money is to make sure our district is aware of the legislative policies that are changing and make sure we change and we address the issues when they come up.
Some of the policies